What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and a quick housekeeping video because, when you're wrong, and you should own it, and public wrong of somebody should be righted also publicly. So a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, I was talking about kind of the woke Hollywood space. That was, and well, used to be my bread and butter, like, Brie Larson, race swap, woke Batwoman, right? That's where many of my viewers came from. And I was discussing on a live stream how that space has fallen off. It's basically dead. And instead of doing the correct thing, which would have been using Google Trend data to prove my point, I used channels like Critical Drinker, Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and my own to illustrate just basically like, hey, look at this trend data, It basically does match. If I show the Google Trend data, again, this is what I should have done. And if I go here, basically, if we look at searches for like woke movies, woke Hollywood, you can see it absolute peaked in 2023 and has basically been on a steady decline. And there's a little bump in December of 2025, but again, it continues to trend down. That's what I should have done. Or just used my own channel to say, hey, these videos don't really bang anymore. People are kind of tired of this. But what I did do is I thought of all the other big channels in the space, Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, Critical Drinker. I brought up all of their analytics to show essentially this trend data, which I could have just showed if I wasn't being so just in the moment. I was like, well, let me use Social Blade and look at all these channels and see my channel peaked here, went down, they peaked here, went down, they peaked here, then everybody basically going down. Well, what I didn't think about was that these fellas would feel like I was putting them out on blast or saying that their content wasn't good or that their channels were dying. And that wasn't what I intended at all. But I understand that may have been what happened, or the outcome of it, and it was not my intention. And so there were some hurt feelings. Apparently, I'm sorry for that. I didn't. It was never my intention to say like, oh, Nerdrotic's content isn't good anymore, or Critical Drinker's content isn't good anymore. I still enjoy and watch both of them. It's just that the entire space itself is different or has, gone down. And even if we look at, if we just look at, woke Hollywood, woke movies, if I add like, let's just say like SJW, let's look at just SJW data, right? This also, you can see it peaked in 2021, had a little bit of peak back in 2023. But basically, it's at an all-time low in November. Again, something must have happened around the end of November or December, where SJW made a little bit of a comeback. But remember, this isn't like 100 score on Google Trends is when it was the most popular. It's not like this doesn't represent like hundreds of millions or like total impressions or total views. You look at a lot of this other. We can even look at DEI. Let's look at DEI, right? That was hotness for a while. This is what I should have been showing. Look at this, DEI, very, very popular for about 2 months and then completely dropped off. What's popular now? I'm not really sure. But what I am sure about is I definitely didn't mean to imply that, their channels were suffering because of anything that they were doing. And so when a couple of them got really mad about it, instead of like saying, oh yeah, I guess maybe they did think that I was putting them out on blast, I just kind of brush it off as people being butthurt, which is stupid and wrong. Because I feel like maybe if somebody, pulled up my channel in front of 10,000 people and was like, hey, look at this, he's fallen off. I'd probably feel some kind of way about that. I didn't say that, but I 100% understand how people could have taken that. And I seriously wish nothing but the best for them. And believe me, nobody wants it's this double-edged sword where, sure, there are things like the Starfleet Academy, which is woke trash, but there's just not as much kind of woke nonsense out there to discuss. It was great when there was for business, but it wasn't great for Hollywood. Rings of Power was a flop, but, as I look back now, it's like, damn, it would have been cool if Rings of Power was good and not some girl power fantasy. Starfleet Academy would have been cool if it wasn't all DEI nonsense. And you would think, oh, well, maybe Hollywood's listening. I don't actually think that's the case. I mean, I think that's part of it, but I think that Hollywood has just gone back to making a bunch of remakes and safer stuff. Now, there's been some good movies that have come out in Hollywood over the past 4 or 5 years that I think are great. With The Holdovers, it was a great movie. With Paul Giamatti is in that, I think. I thought Rental Family with Brendan Fraser was very, very good. I thought The Whale with Brendan Fraser was really, really good. I thought there's been more good movies, which I wish was as profitable or as interesting to people to talk about. When I talk about something being awesome, it's really hard for people to care about that. But also, when you've been talking about, woke Hollywood or this, that, or the other thing for 4 years, eventually people do just move on. And, so the purpose of this video is, first of all, to clarify my statements to those guys and do so publicly, because that's what you should do. Private apologies for private transgressions and public apologies for public transgressions. I should have been more open to understanding, hey, this is why they're mad, as opposed to being like, oh, they're, being weird or something like that. But it does open up the bigger conversation of kind of what is this space even anymore? The kind of the woke video game battle has been won, so to speak. A lot of the companies that were pushing out a lot of the woke video game nonsense, they've gone out of business. Now, I'd rather they would have made good video games, and we still do get great video games occasionally. Expedition 33 was very, very good. I don't know how the new Resident Evil is. People say it's pretty good, but it feels like we're getting more good games now. Arc Raiders, very, very popular. Not my style of game. Same thing with the movies. TV is generally filled with woke trash, but it's so spread out now between, Netflix and Peacock and Hulu and Paramount Plus and Apple TV. It's actually hard to have any cultural moments anymore, which I find perhaps the most interesting. If we talk about like real cultural moments in video games and in entertainment these days, there are so few of them. I mean, Claire Obscura, Expedition 33, that was a big video game, big cultural moment, a lot of news. Name the last movie that, like, quote unquote, everybody was talking about. Black Little Mermaid? Maybe? The last TV show that everyone was talking about, was it 4 years ago when Lord of the Rings came out and was a disaster, and then everyone just moved on? The Tiger King, I suppose Squid Games would probably be something. I think that cultural critique is in a weird spot right now. It's both exciting because more good stuff is coming out, and it's also a little odd because you don't really know what you're watching anymore. Stuff is less overt with the wokeness stuff, but you just kind of know that it's always there bubbling under the surface, and it's always there in Hollywood. And the second that, let's say, Trump's not in office, it's going to come back. It's going to come back with a vengeance. And that's just the way this cycle works, right? If we look at when this stuff peaked, right? Who was in office? You know, we talk about all-time high 2021 for SJWs. Woke Hollywood all-time high was 2023. Joe Biden was in office. You know, Trump takes over in January 2025, and it's been basically not on people's minds. Although I wonder what is going on with this weird SJW spike here. I should go back and look at what happened in December. I'm trying to remember. But it is interesting. And this kind of data, I think, is more interesting to viewers than pulling up a particular channel and putting them on blast, which, again, wasn't my intent, but I apologize. I think all those guys do great work, and I wish them all the best. And so hopefully that can be the end of, I don't want to be feuding with anybody publicly or privately, especially when we agree on 99% of stuff. And that's just where I'm at. So apologize to you guys. And if you felt any kind of way about it, I'm not saying all of them like reached out and spurred out or anything like that, but some of them were pretty mad. And, when you're wrong, you're wrong. And so that's what I'll say. So let's get back on the news cycle for the day. I've got lots of interesting stuff, so I hope you'll enjoy that.